provision of medical supplies and food. The Transport and Housing Bureau would also announce in a timely manner the creation of new transportation channels. For example, on the 2nd of March, I and Mr. Frank Chen went to welcome the first dedicated train service for transporting food to Hong Kong. And then yesterday, on the 11th of March, Mr. Frank Chen visited the location where we are doing a trial of receiving a shipment. This is to make sure that mainland drivers are managed under a closed loop for the transportation of goods to Hong Kong. And then the Food and Health Bureau and the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department will also make daily announcement on the supply of provisions to Hong Kong, in particular fresh food. And also they will report on the market prices. As I mentioned, there is now stable supply of fresh food, and prices are stable now. And also I have to make sure that here I would like to express my gratitude to all those involved in the whole logistics chain. In particular, I would like to thank mainland authorities for their staunch support. They are trying to meet all our demands. And then there is a task force too on helping us with planning the provision of medical supplies to Hong Kong. They work day and night really hard. And then the Guangdong province has also helped us to link up the transportation chain by land or by sea. And I'm grateful to them. And also we must also thank all the practitioners in the logistics trade, including cross-boundary drivers, for adapting to this new mode of operation. I would also like to thank all the businesses for making available free storage space. And then there are real estate developers that provide land for cargo transshipment point. And then I would like to thank the various bodies and volunteers for helping us to distribute medical supplies. Finally, I would like to thank the public for their understanding and support for our work. Now I invite Mr. Edward Yao to tell you more about the provision of medical supplies.
Thank you, fellow citizens, friends of the media. The task force on ensuring medical supplies is a special task force to support the COVID battling work. If we don't have all the supplies coming to Hong Kong, it's going to be affecting the frontline work. The key part of this task is for the central authorities and the Guangdong authorities to cooperate with us. So I'd like to take this opportunity to brief you on this area of work. Overall, in terms of the procurement of medical supplies, every entity, the government logistics department and the hospital authority have been doing this. In the budget, you probably are aware that $7 billion has been set aside for departments to meet the needs for anti-epidemic work. Why do we have to set up such a task force? It is because in order to support the anti-epidemic work on the front line, in order for the public to be properly protected, some of the supplies may be needed in a short time. There is a surge in demand, and there may not be enough supply in a short notice. That the manufacturing places, mainly the mainland, like proprietary Chinese medicine, they are produced, manufactured in the mainland, and they're very effective. So through this task force, we are doing this through the information administration of the mainland to help us with the procurement. And they will also be going to the manufacturers to adjust their production line to fit in with Hong Kong's demand. So our task force is focusing on the supply chain. Of course, we will be dealing with the distribution and all the rest of it. What is worth mentioning is that in terms of supplies from the mainland, there are two types. The first one is the supplies that donated to Hong Kong for free over the past couple of weeks through the manufacturers. There are 3 effective anti-COVID proprietary Chinese medicines have been given to Hong Kong to the tune of 450,000 boxes. We have 374,000 boxes that have already arrived in Hong Kong. So we are distributing in 2 ways. 2/3 will be made available to the 18 Chinese practitioner clinics under the HA. The others are through the HAD for distribution to the RTD residents. And 1/3 of these donated proprietary Chinese medicines would be made available to the Hong Kong community anti-coronavirus link for distribution. And we don't really want to have a situation where people are gathering together for these supplies, so there will be a proper distribution to the relevant people. We're really grateful to the mainland for making available these 500,000 proprietary Chinese medicines. The other area of work is the mainland authorities have undertaken to supply these proprietary Chinese medicine. As you know from the media, these manufacturers have ramped up their production volumes for supply to Hong Kong. From the sales level, we understand that in the market out there, these kind of proprietary Chinese medicines have already been shipped to Hong Kong. So we are making sure that there is enough supply in the market and the prices are maintained at a normal level with normal supply. As you can see, RTHK TV 32, we have the Chinese medicine or the experts to talk about the efficacy of these proprietary Chinese medicine. These are the Chinese medicine donated to Hong Kong by the mainland. The other thing is the mainland is doing a lot of procurement for Hong Kong, like the medical equipment, like the rapid antigen test kits. The people of Hong Kong, and indeed a lot of people in Hong Kong, are using the RAT kits to test their COVID status. And we have been procuring the RAT kits through the mainland. We have 55 million such kits. They've already arrived in Hong Kong. Every day we are distributing in increasing numbers. Last week it was something like 2 million. This week the number has been increasing, and every day we have something like 2 million such rapid testing kits that are being distributed. Now the target for distribution include the frontline medical workers. They have to make sure that they are COVID-free to get on with their work. And also we're dealing with the high-risk people like the elderly homes or RCHDs. We also make available these kits to them. And also there are people who are working in high-risk areas like the cleaning staff, those involved with the sewage testing, or the property management staff, and those who are working in care homes or the cross-boundary truckers. And also during the restriction testing declaration, we are making available these rapid testing kits to the people. Also, the mainland is also helping us in terms of the availability of the rapid testing kits, in terms of the brand, the volume, and the shipments, they have been increasing. Some are as inexpensive as about $10 plus for a kit. Together with the Consumer Council, we also have set up a portal for people to check whether the rapid test kits are up to scratch. So these would give the members of the public more confidence in the use of the rapid testing kits. The other thing which is increasing rapidly through the mainland is the PPEs. Now, all these are from the frontline workers. There is a huge demand on the part of the hospital authority for these equipment, and we are procuring these through the mainland authorities. Usually, the HA would be making the purchase themselves, but because of the huge demand, we are ramping up the supply in this area. The care homes also see a greater need for the PPEs. Dr. Lo Chi Kwong has already alluded to this. We are increasing the supply of these equipment to the care homes. We have the protective overalls, gowns, goggles, shoe covers, and they are to the tune of millions, and also the face mask as well. And the mainland is procuring from various parts of the country on our behalf. There are other medical facilities like the makeshift Fang Chang Hospital and also the CIF, community isolation facilities. We're also increasing the equipment like the air purifier, as referred to by the Chief Executive a moment ago. On a day-to-day work, we are liaising with the Mainland Information Administration. We have regular liaison. Other than video meetings and correspondence exchange, we are making a lot of contacts. We have increased 3 orders. We rely so much on PCR tests. Now we are transitioning to RAT, and we are reviewing the demand on a regular basis, and we are liaising with our counterparts in the mainland. Other than supplies, together with Mr. Frank Chen, we will have to make sure that the logistics supply can be increased. Furthermore, these supplies are arriving in Hong Kong rapidly, and there is a huge demand on storage. So the GLD has already increased in Tsuen Wan, Chai Wan, Tuen Mun, Kowloon Bay, the storage spaces. There are two areas which have been set aside for short-term storage purposes. As you know, the Convention Exhibition Center in Wan Chai is one of them. The management company is funding the rent for free. The other one is the Shore Studio. So we have 2 additional storage spaces with about more than 100,000 square meters for the storage of the supplies. So, simply put, I'd like to get across the message to the public that in terms of our anti-pandemic work, the front line, all the relevant entities or the members of the public, we are adjusting our work on a regular basis. And it is a case of all hands on deck. Every department will be putting in the efforts to fine-tune the arrangement to make sure the logistics will be done in a better way.
Mr. Frank Chen, thank you, Chief Executive. We want to ensure the stable supply of goods from the mainland. So we have worked together with the central authorities to make plans, and also there is active participation of the various sectors. Now we want to ensure there is a smooth land transport. We've also created channels for water transport and rail transport. Now for water transport, there are now express services. So they are in operation, and we keep increasing the capacity. As of today, we have scheduled services to provide goods, send goods to us. For example, the Shenzhen Yantian International Container Terminal, that's a dedicated service to the Kuaiqing Container Terminal, and then from the Shenzhen Dachanwan terminal to another terminal in Hong Kong, and then from Shenzhen Ma Wan Kong terminal to the River Trade Terminal in Hong Kong. And also there's water transport from the Lianhuashan port in Guangzhou, Huangpu Kong in Zhongshan, and Dongmun Port in Zhuhai that come to Hong Kong. There are also water transport of supplies from other ports to Hong Kong. And necessary, they will increase frequencies. For example, on the 9th of March, there are free shipping services to send goods of 180,000 tons. And yesterday they set a record of delivering over 10,000 tons of goods to Hong Kong. From information from the main authorities, from the 10th of March, there are 3 ports in Shenzhen that send goods to Hong Kong, and there are over 16,900 TEUs. That's a 20-feet container. And that contains some 107,000 tons of food, 5,000 tons of fresh food, and about 100,000 tons of non-fresh food items. As for cross-boundary railway services, as you know, actually the services has been suspended since such cargo rail services have been stopped since 2010. But the Guangdong provincial governments, the Shenzhen municipal government, and other relevant departments have worked very hard. And then with the full support of the sectors, we spent just 7 days to plan a trial rail service. And so we are able to restart cross-boundary railway cargo services without hiccups. Now, since the service started operation on the 2nd of 3rd, it's been working well. 2nd of March, it's been working well. And then last Wednesday, on the 9th of March, we started to arrange 2 railway services to Hong Kong each day. And we will have regard to the demands in future, and we could keep gradually increase the frequency. As at yesterday, the 11th of March, railway cargo services have sent us about 600 tons of supplies. That includes rapid antigen test kits, protective gear, and anti-epidemic supplies. Now we want to ensure further stability of land supply by land transport. So we have worked together with the Shenzhen authorities to speed up the arrangement of establishing centralized cargo transfer points for non-fresh food items and other goods. We will set up 3 such cargo transfer points. One is the international airport air cargo terminal, the river trade car terminal, and also the Kuaiqing container terminal. And yesterday, on the 11th of March, we conducted a trial run. It went well. And then before the end of March, at 17 Kempok Road, there's another site. We will be doing another trial of a different mode of cargo transfer. We're grateful to a private developer for lending us this site for free to set up this transfer yard. Now, we have regard to the development of the epidemic, and we want to make sure that the epidemic will not have much impact on the cross-boundary transport. The SL government is grateful to the cross-boundary transport sector and two places for actively ensuring the stable supply of goods. Now, we have created channels for water and land transport of goods. As for supply of fresh food, as the Chief Executive pointed out, supply is now stable. We are grateful to the Guangdong Provincial Government and the Shenzhen Municipal Government for their full support for our anti-epidemic effort. They are showing great care and concern for the people of Hong Kong. As for supporting the infected, together with the taxi trade, we have set up dedicated taxi teams for the infected with relatively mild symptoms. While they're waiting to be admitted to hospital, they could get free transfer service to send them to designated clinics, so they could take free taxi trips to and from the clinics. Those who need to seek such treatment could book a taxi on the dedicated platform, dedicated.taxi Hong Kong, or they could call the hotline 369-34770. The taxi team will only take passengers who have made appointments with the dedicated clinic. For others who have not made such bookings, they could make alternative transport arrangements. And also, the hospital authority has increased the number of designated clinics from 7 to 17. So the dedicated taxi service will also increase its capacity to meet the needs. There are now about 400 taxis providing service. Every day there are some 4,000 bookings. And so far, there have been more than 42,000 trips. The trade will continue to monitor the situation. If necessary, we would appropriately adjust the number of taxis in the fleet. And also, we want to lessen the pressure on ambulance service operated by the Fire Services Department. And also, for those infected with no or mild symptoms, we want to transfer them to isolation facilities as soon as possible. So we're working with the minibus teams and other trades to arrange transportation of these patients to community isolation facilities. As more and more community isolation facilities come into operation, the dedicated designated bus fleet has increased from 200 coaches to 1,000 coaches and minibuses. Now, the operation has been going well, and with increasing demand, we plan to add another 500 taxis for deployment by the Fire Services Department. As at the 10th of March, the designated bus fleet has arranged 17,000 patients to go to community isolation facilities. Thank you. The floor is now open to questions. Please raise your hands if you want to ask a question. And when you're called upon, please identify your organization and use the microphone to speak. Now, there are many reporters here, so please limit yourself to 2 questions, and there will be no supplementary questions. Thank you. The lady in the middle. I'm from News. I have 2 questions. Firstly, we see that there is a drop in the number of infected cases. So is that a turning point? And how would the SL government implement the free measures suggested by Professor Liang? And the second question, how many civil servants are still working from home? Now, when the chief executive was interviewed by the China news agency, she said that she would send all civil servants to fight in the battle. So how would you achieve that? Thank you. In the past few days, we see the number of confirmed cases each day has not gone up. So at least we're not seeing any more exponential growth in the number of cases. And then there are about 3,000 self-reported cases of positive result with the RAT on the online platform, also daily. Now, we've only just implemented the online platform for people to report positive RAT result for 2 or 3 days, so we still have to observe the situation for a while. And then, as mentioned, there are many people using RATs these days. And for those in the front line fighting the epidemic, or those who are high-risk groups, we have to provide them with 1 to 2 million RAT kits each day. So if there are so many tests being done, that should give us a good indication of how many infections there are actually. In short, in response to your question, we cannot say at this point that we have reached a turning point. But of course, we want a turning point to come soon. And if there is some larger decrease in cases, but we are not yet able to make that conclusion now. But of course, we want to be ahead when we carry out our anti-epidemic work. We don't want to try to be doing catching up. And so we need to make plans, and say if the situation deteriorates, then we must speed up the boosting of our testing capacity and the provision of community isolation facilities. But of course, if things turn for the better, we see a decrease in the number of cases, then we have to make preparations for the reopening of the many closed premises, and also we need to drop roadmap on the reopening of these premises, on the resumption of face-to-face learning in schools and so on. Now, in the 5th wave of the epidemic, we never describe the arrangement for civil servants as working from home. If necessary, they have to go to work at the office, and when they're at home, they're on standby. Whenever there's a need, they will be called to come back to the office to join the fight at the front line. Now, for example, now we're doing many restriction testing declaration operations, RTD operations. For each such operation, we need to deploy about 300 to 500 civil servants. And we are not just drawing civil servants from a few departments. In the past, it was the Home Affairs Department, the Department of Health, and so on. But now there are many policy bureau involved in RTD operations, so they will draw staff from the bureau and the relevant departments to come and work at the RTD operations. Now, Mr. Edward Yao is responsible for commerce and economic development, but then his colleagues are involved in RTD operations too. So there is no longer distinction among departments and bureau. And it's not the case that there are many civil servants idling at home waiting to be called to duty. But of course, the fact is rather many civil servants have become infected, or they are close contacts and they need to stay in they need to be quarantined. The latest figure is there are about 20,000 civil servants who've been infected. That's 30% of the total civil service force. But at the same time, many civil servants have returned to work, and that's a good thing. I believe in many large corporations, that's also the case. Infected staff or quarantined staff are slowly able to return to work. So with cargo transportation, logistics, and so on, in past periods, there's a shortage of staff, but maybe these workers are now able to get back to work. Thank you.
Lady in front, please. Now TV. Just a moment ago, you mentioned that there are a lot of supplies coming to Hong Kong. I mean, is it difficult for them to be distributed to the public? Many times they would not receive the supplies until they've become negative again. And also the electronic wristband, they will not be distributed. Would there be any loopholes? And people are free to roam about. And the CSB has revised the protocol. Those who are re-positive will be allowed to work. Will this be applicable to the rest of Hong Kong as well? They don't need to be isolated even if they are re-positive. I defer to Mr. Yao to talk about the distribution. He already alluded to this already a moment ago, in fact. Now you talk about the COVID positive cases, those that have not been sent to the community isolation facilities. And in terms of priority, they can stay at home for isolation. Now we have the supplies kit. I mean, the distribution has been lagging behind in the past because of the sheer volume. We have already caught up, and on the 9th of March, we have distributed 60,000 such kits to those who have been issued with an isolation order. So this we will be working very hard on to make sure that everyone in home isolation or quarantine will have the anti-pandemic kit being made available to them, other than the information like the hotline, the designated clinics, the designated fleet. A lot of these kind of information. We have the rapid antigen test kit. We also have the proprietary Chinese medicine, thermometer, face masks, and so on. So we are trying our best. There is a short clip that will be released covering the entire procedure. I can give you some preview that tomorrow we'll be talking about the support for home confinement. We're going to have the SFH. We also have the SHA, who will be on hand to talk about the services like the hotlines and so on. We also have the SIT on hand to talk about the making available all the supplies, and the audio will also be part of it. Now, audio is responsible for IT, and I mean, you might find it inconceivable that the audio is also on the front line distributing all these materials to the confinees and also the households. Now, the absence of the electronic wristbands, in fact, we, together with the CHP, conducted some assessment that this is not a loophole by any stretch of imagination, because we are doing a lot of spot check to make sure that the home confinees are not leaving their homes. So the Security Bureau will be supporting this area of work. They will also be conducting inspection. Now, with the COVID situation, we do need to have the full cooperation of the public. Now, we do have the legal backing. If people are uncooperative, we do take law enforcement action. Now, for the Civil Service Bureau, the COVID positive individual, if he has already tested negative twice, and if there is a re-positive, and they allowed to back to work. Now, I'm no expert in medical area, but we have already assessed the risks. Now, you heard that when the CT value is very high, the viral load is very low. It means that the transmissibility is not particularly strong. Now, we have to bear in mind the demand for manpower, and this is the arrangement that we have put in place. Mr. Yao would like to supplement regarding the distribution of supplies. Yes, normally we hear this kind of question. Our task force is coordinating supplies as to, we can see that the supplies are being distributed. Before last week, in terms of the rapid testing kits, we made them available to the frontline workers, but gradually we are making these available to the housing estates subject to RTD. The HAD has been distributing these quite a lot. So the HAD has been increasing in the use of these supplies, and also the care homes. As we are moving towards the RAT and also the self-declaration, we are making adjustment to our arrangement. Like the chief executive said, the OGO is also involved in this exercise. So there are different channels for people to get hold of these rapid testing kits. If you register online a COVID positive case, the COVID patient would receive such rapid testing kits for them to undergo self-testing every single day over the next week. And we never stop making available the supplies to the frontline posts through volunteers and those who are involved in sewage tracking, and we're making available the supplies to these people as well. We're making fine-tuning as we go along. The lady at the back, please. Commercial radio, 2 questions, if I may. First of all, there are some media outlets that find that next to AWE there are sites that are lying vacant, lying empty, and there are people who have yet to be isolated. Are there any mismanagement? And there are people who are in, or senior citizens who are in isolation that cannot be contacted, and they don't have a shower for many, many days on end. Will there be any particular channel of communications to resolve the problem? Thank you for your question. For these 2 questions, they have highlighted a broader issue, and that is the lack of manpower, in particular in the care sector. There are 2 types of facilities in the AWE. One is the HA's treatment facilities, and we do have HA doctors and nurses there, and the other one is for the SWD to carry out quarantine. Now, if there are cases from the care homes, then the close contacts from these homes will be transferred to the AWE quarantine facilities. Now, they have now become the isolation facilities. For the former, I understand the utilization is not particularly high because of the lack of manpower. The medical and nursing care manpower is in short supply. For the latter, the utilization is very high. The SWD, together with the private contractors, are providing the manpower. As you are aware, we have to reduce the burden on the HA, and in the indoor games centers, we are retrofitting them into the respite or the holding centers for the senior citizens. Now, some of them are in stable condition and they can be discharged from the hospital, but they cannot go back to the nursing homes. We are calling these holding centers. We have one in Choi Wan and Shek Mei. We have 2 there. The third one is about to be opened. We have 1,200 bed holding center in the cruise terminal. because of the demand, I would like to open more, but we're hamstrung by a manpower shortage. We're not sitting idly by and do nothing. Now, earlier, we have made a request with the central authority to see whether the medical teams can be arranged to come to Hong Kong to help the hospital authority to treat patients. We have the AWE, we have the North Lantau Hospital Infection Control Center. Because of the manpower crunch, these facilities are not really used to the full potential. So we have made these requests that the central authorities should definitely support Hong Kong because of the difference in the systems. We have to do something to see how they can assist the hospital authority to do the treatment work. The other thing is, as Mr. or Dr. Lo Chu Kwong said many times, in the care homes, in terms of care workers or health workers, we're in chronic shortage. And we have about 20% shortfall all along. Now, the problem is really getting more serious during COVID because some of them came down with COVID. Because of the shortage, we of course train and recruit locally, and at the same time, we are doing this through the supplementary labor scheme. So this time, the Social Welfare Department has already relaxed the SLS, and I'm grateful to the labor unions for not raising any objection. Now, the SWD would like to recruit something like 1,000 carers from the mainland so that we can take full advantage of these facilities. There are some problems with regard to the recruitment, and we are trying very hard to make sure that the existing facilities or the facilities that are going to be coming on stream, all these hardware for battling COVID will be fully utilized. But manpower crunch is a harsh reality that we have to contend with. Now, you mentioned the individual cases. Some senior citizens have moved into these facilities and they cannot get in touch with their family members. I'll be asking the colleagues managing these facilities to get in touch with the family members. Thank you.
On the back, the one in blue, please.
MP, the first question is whether the government has set a specific target to meet as to how many cases it has to reduce in a certain period of time. If the government does not have such a goal, how can the government assure the Hong Kong public that it can successfully combat the fifth wave of the pandemic? And also the second question is about the remarks of Xiao Baolong yesterday, because he said the anti-epidemic work in Hong Kong should be carried out as precise as acupuncture. So what area can the government do to ensure a more precise and targeted approach when combating the pandemic? For example, does the government agree that it should have targeted the elderly in its vaccination drive with a more aggressive and targeted approach to avoid the thousands of deaths recorded right now? Thank you.
Of the two questions, first of all, we have been fighting this epidemic for more than 2 years, like the rest of the world. And every government will have to determine their anti-epidemic policies according to the actual situation, the ability of the government, and the cooperation of the people in that particular place. I could understand that people are very worried with the current fifth wave because of the tsunami sort of increase in the number of confirmed cases and the number of deaths. But we mustn't forget that we have gone through 4 waves of the COVID-19 epidemic with, I would say, relative success. I wouldn't say we are very successful because at the same time we need to impose border controls and social distancing measures. So in tackling this unprecedented fifth wave, we have to examine very carefully the development of the epidemic. That's why I said that at this moment, we could not comfortably say that we have passed the peak. Although some experts have said that perhaps we have passed the peak, but we rather take a very cautious stance that we will closely monitor the coming days to see whether we are seeing a drop in the confirmed cases, especially under the self-declaration system of those who were tested positive by the rapid antigen test. Of course, we would like to see the cases to come down to an extent that from our experience and with the experts' advice, that we could call it an end to the fifth wave, and then we go back to normal. And this has been happened in the second wave, the third wave, and the fourth wave. And the objective now is, of course, to achieve that goal as soon as possible. But it would be too simplistic for me to set a specific number. By setting a specific number, which means that we are not being very scientific, because we need to take into account all circumstances. The second question about remarks made by the director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. I would first wish to express my deepest gratitude to Director Sha Bo-long for his personal attention and tremendous efforts in coordinating the various ministries and commissions in the Central People's Government to support Hong Kong. As I understand, he has personally chaired 8 coordination meetings to make sure that every request from the Hong Kong SAR government has been attended to by the relevant ministries and commissions. And he also, through his deputy directors, communicate with me very often to convey his care and concern about Hong Kong, and also to assure me, as well as the people of Hong Kong, that the central government is always behind us. I cannot really comment on the adjective or the description he used, but I can assure him and assure the people of Hong Kong that we are putting in every effort to fight this epidemic. We are not short of money. We will spend whatever money is required in order to get us out of this epidemic as soon as possible. And more importantly, the whole of the Hong Kong SAR government is acting as one government to tackle this epidemic. I don't want any more speculations that there are bureaus and departments that are working very hard, whereas others are not doing so. I can assure you every bureau, every department has been mobilized in this fight against the epidemic. Now, coming back to the elderly, as you will remember, a few days ago, I announced a series of measures exactly to help the elderly, to save lives, to keep them healthy, and to ensure that we could achieve the target of vaccinating as many elderly as possible within the shortest period of time. So as far as the elderly who could take a jab in the elderly homes, the target is to complete going around all the homes and administer the vaccination on or before the 18th of March. And we have told you yesterday that we should be able to meet this target with the participation and cooperation of all our partners from the medical community. So we will continue to do so because every life is very valuable. We will do all we can to protect the elderly people of Hong Kong and also the general public. Thank you.
Last question. The gentleman over there. I'm from Hong Kong 01. just now there's mention of distribution of proprietary Chinese medicine supplied by the central authorities. Now, distribution is given to those under RTDs and others. But then some experts say that it really depends on individuals' conditions if the proprietary Chinese medicine is suitable. If you distribute the PCM, maybe some people would just take it and then they find that actually it's not the right medicine for them, and then they'll be affected. And then there are some whose family members passed away, and they criticize the government for not doing proper coordination. So what is your response? Now, for proprietary Chinese medicine donated by the central authorities, they can be used in Hong Kong. Either exemption or approval has been given for the use of such medication. But of course, with any proprietary Chinese medicine that you could buy over the counter, you have to first read the instructions on the box before you use it. It's the same with any proprietary Western medicine. I'm sure people will exercise caution when taking such medication. We're not saying that just because we distribute the medicine to you, you have to use it. It's really for you to keep for emergency. And if you think it's the right medication for you, then you can use it. But then don't forget, we have made a reminder to you. Maybe you could consult Chinese medicine practitioners. That's why the proprietary Chinese medicine is being distributed at Chinese medicine clinics. And also the Food and Health Bureau has worked with many of the practitioners of Chinese medicine to do online consultation. They're also disseminating much information, and people are able to make telephone inquiries. Now, if someone received the proprietary Chinese medicine and they're not sure whether the medicine is right for them for their own condition, then I would encourage them to make use of the online consultation service by Chinese medicine practitioners. In fact, after today's press conference, I'm going to go to the Baptist University because they have launched a free online Chinese medicine consultation. It's very popular. I think they've already done some 8,000 consultations, and they're expanding the service. So in a moment, I'm going to visit them. And then tomorrow, when we talk about giving support to home confinees, and we could explain to you further how we're going to boost our capacity in that respect, say for those in home isolation or quarantine, or even for the general public, if they want to take certain medication, they will need more information first. Now, for people who've lost their family members, we fully appreciate their bereavement. That's why we're working very hard in for members of the Legislative Council or for the general public, if you have lost family members, we send you our deepest condolences. It's hoped that with our effort, we're able to come out of this fifth wave of the epidemic soon, and that people could go back to life as normal, and everyone will stay healthy. And everyone could carry on with their work and their lives. But then we need the full cooperation of the public, and we will certainly continue to put in our best. Thank you. So that's the end of the press conference today. We'll see you again tomorrow at 11 a.m.